very much. I didn't judge the hospitality on the weather, and of course I'm used to rain, that's not the problem. I put up a green, I think you probably would recognize that as the symbol that I try to feel Irish, though I don't dare to speak any Irish welcome words now. It's really a challenge to be here in a conference that has impressed me very much. I have been inspired by every of the speakers, and I tried to turn upside down what I wanted to tell you every time again. I stopped doing that about before breakfast when I put my presentation together, but I will probably not stick to what I've prepared. So you don't be too confused when I skip some of the slides. I thought I put down some messages and some quotations that I think could be useful for you and share it with you as a PowerPoint, and try to give somewhat complimentary but more comprimed speech here to keep the schedule, which I normally don't do. So it's just to tell you that I intend to keep the limit. So I try to give you an overview about the following items, something to introduce the European Parents Association, and tell you that the main motive why I'm very glad that I'm able to be here is that if an association pays a membership fee, sometimes it's not easy to transfer the positive image of where this fee goes. And so if I'm here to give you some kind of appreciation of your work and a sign of interest to learn and take some of the impressions that I see here in Ireland back to our work, and there is something to share with the others, that you probably have a more positive view of what this money is worth for. Of course, there are some consideration about what the parents' role is. Several of these things have been said quite in line with what the policies of EPA are. There is a lot of things about what we are thinking when we use several words in the field of education, so that's what's behind the semantics. Thank you, Senator, for putting up the problems of narrowing learning outcome focuses, which have been on the floor yesterday as well, which I think is a very big thing that parents should be concerned about. The full experience, the growth as a personal growth, which is an important image because it's always economic growth if it comes to European policies. And to come back to the word of school partnership, or partnership of educators, and even more, which has also been on the floor. So a brief introduction of what you should know about the European Parents Association. When we say it's the European Association, we have gained a monopole stakeholder status with the European Commission, which is very demanding for a volunteer as myself, traveling to Brussels one and the other day for 2 hours of a meeting, because I'm not Brussels-based, but living in Vienna. So Ireland is not the westernmost member. The westernmost member is Iceland. I was wondering how late the sun rises there when I was experiencing today. Very dark, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning. Malta and Norway mark the south and northmost parts of our members, and as you can read from Norway, it's not an Iceland. Both of them are not really EU members, and we are very happy that we could get some contacts with further non-EU members, specifically the former eastern part of Europe and the Baltics, the Balkan states. And there is something to do in favor of parents and their role in civil society, because they have a very different history. So let me point out one thing that sounds quite strange. We are always talking about the representation of 150 million of parents. To tell you the truth, there was a printing error because mille in the Romanic languages is 1,000, and so putting another 1,000 in would be 150 billion of parents, which is probably a little bit more than we have as a population of the world. 150 million are all the parents around Europe, roughly estimated. So that means actually that we are not boasting, but we are feeling very much concern of parents that have never heard the word Parents Association ever in their life, but are probably most over-challenged by the education of their children. So this is one missionary statement. And this is a brief excerpt from the mission statement that I will just skip You can read it. And this is a very important image, according to my estimate. It is the real challenge to bridge this pyramid of representations down to the parents at the grassroots. So that's some of them who don't know about education as an important topic, who don't know about representative structures, who are hardly reached by any means of communication, but we should always feel responsible for them. And I think there is a lot of programs that could improve the scope of our work to reach them. And you take notice of these twofold arrows. So it's one challenge for the representation to be visible to the ones who pay membership fees in one or the other way, and who have to bring their information up to the top of the European representation. At the moment we have no global parents association, but there are links that go beyond Europe, and they are enriching anyway. Wherever you go, you learn new things and you see the confirmation of the same challenges. So, though parents are probably the most diverse group that you could ever pick out of society, but I think that there is a common denominator that is big enough that it makes sense to try to have a common voice vis-à-vis governments, vis-à-vis the economy in society, and speak up on behalf of the children and on behalf of the parents. There were very good explanations about this very delicate interlinkage. I already heard that primary educators, thank you for bringing that motive up in advance, announcing that this is one of our core messages and missions. And we have discussed it with Anya, who is one of the native speaking persons who could support our arguing of whether we should have a more delicate description, whether primary is enough. And she pointed out that it can be read and understood that it is the first ones, which no one would deny, but also the best. And to be more true, it's not always really the best, but the most impacting. This makes it an issue, because if you don't take parents as partners into education, you will be very limited with the scope of it. The scientific evidence is so strong. Now let me just put up some quotations that, well, it's my words that I used when I say EPA, but it has not been a matter of arguing within the association. So that's really a nice sentence. You should keep it in mind. It has actually been said in exactly that way in a conference when I stood up and had a delicate question about the statistical evidence that I didn't believe. And one of these researchers said, well, that's a problem. We have to do so much of calculations that actually parents spoil the results of every survey on public or education. So you don't see that that's a very positive view on parents, don't you? So what I said then is, we don't like to be blamed when we feel we try to be good parents. We want to have not only this strong but a good impact on the learning of our children. And why not approach it in a political and social way, other way around, and see what does it need to make parents aware of their role, to empower them to be whatever we call good parents or better parents, to improve the opposite. If you have a correlation, that's just a mathematical tool to find out whether there could be something that links causes and results together. But the more important arguing is, how can you dare and reduce this very diverse group in population, these parents, to just put them on spots on a single line? The reasons why parents have a positive impact on the academic results of their children is not because they are rich or they are well educated. It's because they turn all of the needs and really take into consideration what their child needs. A little bit jumping to another aspect, but it's coming to the narrowing of learning outcome. Take into consideration that the learning is something that we should turn our focus much more on, and that this learning is a very, very individual thing. the abilities, the deficits, the strengths, the weaknesses of individual learners are so different, and some will proceed with their reading quite well, while others are better in mathematics or have their best position in arts. And so we take into consideration that their pathway through learning will probably need a different setup, and we should give them more room there. One of the reasons why the parental impact can be so strong, because parents have this very individual approach and support for the needs of their children. So these are some quotations that you probably don't need, because I've heard that the representatives of policy here are very much aware about the importance of the role of parents in education. Let me probably point out this quotation of Ramon Fletcher. He has not said it in that comprimed way, but it is the message that I heard out of two presentations. He's a sociologist working in Barcelona in a very deprived area, and he has done some literacy programs with his sociology studies, and he found out that there is quite a different impact of teaching or letting them learn. I would prefer to say it this way around. But it needs not this looking down to the uneducated, poor migrants and giving them some aid, but really take them as serious, as critical thinkers. And what they did actually in that project was reading Virginia Woolf and other modern, really challenging literature and having rounds of discussion, which you wouldn't think is the outcome of a first literacy program, won't you? So that's the idea of being a little bit more delicate when it comes to integration of migrants and less educated persons. And that probably is the most important quotation, because Joyce Epstein from the US is more or less the initiator of all the research about the parental impact on education. And I had the opportunity to talk to her earlier this year. And in a final presentation of this conference, ERNAP is the European Research Network about parents in education, so it's more or less our network. She said that there is such a clear evidence that there is no more need to put any kind of research into whether the impact is good or bad, but to turn to more delicate aspects of how to really implement a strategy to reach out to the far away parents, to integrate them more definitely and make school communities a good environment for the learning children. So stepping into a more practical thing, even parents tend to be very focused on learning outcome and grading. And I've been advertising for Parents Association several times, and there were two types of questions in the first years of secondary in Austria. That's at the age of 10. So the first question is, what is necessary to do to get an A level in biology or whatever? And the second question is, what is the color of the textbook? So that's the two levels. There is nothing about how do you promote the learning of my child? What can I do? How do we cooperate? That's the big gap, and of course the gap covers the most important part of parental involvement. So that's not the good way of thinking of teachers getting together and thinking about the most effective traps setting up in education. When we talk about education and teaching, we sometimes seem to forget that you can put the best teachers in front of a class. If the students don't want to learn, they won't probably learn. You can put up threats, you can probably set them goals, and some of them will try to get through the threats and get their marks. Others will probably not be very motivated. And there was something about the amount of facts that you lose after the tests very, very quickly. So probably we should talk a little bit more about the delicate aspects of what learning is all about. So I put in some keywords, well, a nice thing to argue about afterwards, but the idea is probably mostly to be a little bit sensitive, that education is not a box where you put someone in and get a good learner out, or someone who has just passed the examinations and performs well afterwards. Yes, another thing that should probably be taken into consideration more intentionally is that we not only have to think about the formal, which is the school, the universities, but also about the opportunities of non-formal and informal learning. And as I've been discussing today at breakfast already with Tommy, there is a very, very good initiative that you have well established here, that is parents' trainings, which is assigned to be non-formal learning environment. And you see, I put learning and not training there. So it's an opportunity. So you are learning. I don't know whether you are aware of it. You are learning, even if you don't believe me. You will have a different attitude. You will have changed your mind. You will link together all the information that we pass from up here to you. You will critically discuss it. But that's learning. And so that's, if we are positive in it, we are lifelong learners, and we are able to cope with the changing demands of our life in a better way. So when you talk about schools and qualities, that's a little bit of a jump, but as I told you, I have to be very, very compliant. And I think that's a very, very, very important issue that normally is seen very simple, because you know that on the top thing we have this competition of national educational systems. And we have the media who put out league tables of Ireland. I don't know where Ireland is in the PISA league table. I know that Austria and Germany had a rivalry of being a little bit the other way around, and there was even a calculation error that put us in the better position in Austria. But that was the thing that the public did receive as a message. There was no discussion about the more delicate items. I would want to be even more critical and think about, what do we as parents really focus on? Is it the most important thing that the Irish system of education performs better than the English, or whatever you want to have, the most fashionable national rivalry? Or is it the interest to have the best conditions for learning for the individual? And if you go down through this scale, you will probably agree that there are different mechanisms that are taken into consideration. There is a different way of thinking about how could we have an idea about what quality could be, what could be the aims that we set up together and negotiate with the responsible partners in education. And what I'm advertising for is to take this in focus. We have been arguing with politicians in several European countries when they put up some statistics and say, well, in the average we have only 20 kids in class. But we are offended by parents who say, well, how come my child is sitting with 35 others and the classroom isn't big enough? So we should have a very, very thorough look on the individual conditions and the different requirements of children. And that cannot be seen in the top level, and that cannot even be seen on the school level. So, of course, it doesn't make sense to get in that individual level alone, but to have a certain kind of discussion on the classroom level, involving the parents, involving the students, involving the teachers, that could probably be something that gained several benefits for the individual as well as the peer group, the learning group. So, well, that was the wrong sequence. You see that I just tried to give some flash words of what to think about. So what is the benefits of focusing on the classroom level? So I think it's a little bit innovative because nobody cared really to give a responsibility to that level and this group of partners. So we have these individual needs that can be depicted there, and to have a better reflection on how the learning process as a collective thing goes on. Having the teacher giving information, setting up the framework for the learning of the group or the individuals, giving them the responsibility, and of course the parents should be involved because they see the complementary view at home, they can give in their support, they can probably bring in material if they know what is necessary. And I think that one of the important things is, yes, this is a quotation again. Stefan Hoffmann is an educational scientist from Vienna, so he can really be quoted as an expert. here, and he supported this view that there is a very effective thing because the peer group, and we have heard that before by Johannes Thiener. Yeah, you pointed out the importance of the peer group, and it is, according to Hoffman, the second most impacting factor for education. And I think that is the crucial thing. That is to be in charge of the individual and the collective responsibility and take ownership. Is a nice word that's frequently used, but really think of it. You know that your hands-on thing can change, can make it better. And you remember, I focused that we should look at the learning process rather than just having the passive role of sitting in a classroom and being taught something. So this makes the responsibility another word that I feel is a little bit magic. From my understanding, one of the meta things that goes on to education is that one who is knowing better, who is stronger, who is older, who is wiser, hopefully, who is more experienced, passes over information, gives help to a learner. But during all this procedure, the most important thing is that you pass responsibility. You let loose your child. It's of course one of these things that you depicted so nicely about these first years with the sleeves that hang down to the ground, is that he steps into a new stage of his own responsibility, and to be aware of this as a teacher, as a parent, and let the child go as far as you can burden him or her with responsibility. That makes it a very delicate thing. So this is to bring to you that I've been on a parent's mission at the Association for Teacher Education in Europe, and I had a lecture there to articulate the demand for something like preparation of teachers for the cooperation with parents. And I just tried to outline, and the native lady pointed out that these verses would not really have a friendly sound. And I said, well, it was intended to tell you that sometimes it is a little bit like a battle. Of course it should not, therefore it's put in parentheses. And I don't think I have to ask you, I think you will agree that these kind of situations are not always going smooth. And I think we can agree that though we as representatives may be able to prepare ourselves, it can only be done by the professional education of teachers to prepare them to be the strong, reliable, resilient part. If parents come in very excited, offending the teacher with some things, he or she should be prepared to know that it's not authority and the truth. You have a very nice consideration about that. It's not losing the authority because you have to argue about whether you did right or wrong. It's just to understand what was the message that went home. Why is this irritation so big? Maybe there is simply something that was misunderstood, or maybe I did something wrong. I did mistreat this individual child by whatever I did overlook. So I think there is a lot of things that could be improved by a good teacher training, and I think that probably parents' associations should be involved there, because if we do well with this linking to the grassroots, we have an incredible amount of expertise about where the challenges really are, and we can put up some ideas of what to be prepared for. And of course, there is a problem with languages. The technological speech of school authorities is sometimes not really sounding in the correct way in the ears of parents. And even if there is no good use of how to get together, no good routine, it's even more challenging. Okay, so there are some quotations about what to gain. This again is something that I just want to put here and say you will see in the slides, and it's just redone from literature as you see here. And of course, as we are active members of civil society with a European level aspect as well, so we are active European citizens. We should try to be on the top level of this ladder, and also look for indications that our school systems guides the students up there and gives them the room to act in a responsible way in their learning, in their school community. So that was a little bit too fast. I put up a list of things where I think this cooperation, this partnership could be of a very beneficial impact. And I gave you a quotation, and this is also an interesting thing because this has been a bigger study with some 1,000 interviews done on behalf of the Ministry of Culture in Bavaria, and they didn't use the results. Just by accident, we received insight in the presentation. There were some interesting outcomes, and I will have to say some words about what I think should be considered important when we talk about partnership, and some is already stated here. Partnership is not just a formal regulated cooperation or something like that. Partnership goes into informal communication, and it's very important for parents who are volunteers who don't count for minutes they work together with schools, whereas teachers have the right to do so. But teachers did confirm that they felt a benefit when they had also informal contact with parents, which was as simple as say hello when you meet in the supermarket, or talk about something, the weather or something more important. But not only stick to the professional needs of interaction. It's a pity that they didn't talk about students and their experience and evaluation of partnership. So I think I didn't put up what I think is very important to talk about partnership, and I felt that you also supplied us with very important aspects already. Partnership is not a regulated cooperation that just gets working 9 to 5 or something like that. Partnership means to have, if it's a real lifetime partnership, you could probably label love on it. I would say it has to imply a close distance between individuals that at least needs an empathy element. Be aware that you have to put trust onto your vis-a-vis, and if this trust is over-challenged, if this trust is broken, it will hurt. So you take a certain risk to get into a partnership relation, but there is something to gain, because working together in partnership, in a trustful cooperation, will probably enable you to go further together, and of course to support. So that I think I will, yeah, that's something that I have, that's another important quotation. This it doesn't fit to the thing about partnership now directly, but it's important to point out that the learning outcome, as has been outlined before, is in the danger to be very narrow. You used the word facts for it. Now we have a word competence, which is very challenging for assessment of learning outcome. And this person, Pasi Salbeck from Finland, has been working with the World Bank, as far as I know. So he comes from the center of all these testing stuff. And he is very critical on that, and you probably know immediately was German. I didn't learn it when I heard his presentation. The general education reform movement, as he labeled it, that tends to be very accountable, is doing some harm to a broad understanding of what learning outcome could be. Sorry that this dropped into the partnership motive now, but I have to point out so that you know why this quotation maybe is extremely important. So, sorry that I didn't add some references to the speakers that I experienced with very much pleasure this morning, but I just tried to link in what was very important for me from yesterday evening, and I had the pleasure to talk to both of them in a private way. And I think that you could really be glad to have this very high recognition by the partners, by the authorities. And that's, well, it's deserved, no question. Every parent's representation deserves to be recognized and supported, but it was spoken in a very true and believable way. So I congratulate to this achievement. And talking about what I heard, I was very confused at the beginning about what this junior cycle was all about, but I got my explanations. I feel well informed now. But what I saw is that, of course, it will probably take a little bit too long to implement when it hurts as it is now. But I think that there are some aspects that are very valuable. One is that it includes this more delicate approach that the learning itself is a value that should be taken into consideration when it comes to examination and to grading. That's a very important thing, and you should keep an eye on it, not to lose it. And the other thing is that the implementation respects the real challenges on the grassroots, on the grounds, the implementation in the field, and you should also take care of it to be involved there, but that's the good way to do it, because the expertise that is on the ground, the expertise that is among the teachers, among the school principals, among the parents, and the students, they can be very clever when they analyze the situation, should really be taken seriously into consideration. So I'm slightly beyond my time. I want to show you this nice picture. That's probably not the post-primary, that's more the primary section. So let's think about that the child should be in the center. We have heard that this morning in a very, very touching way. So if parents and teachers could do their efforts jointly to really give the child an aid in the learning process, that would be worthwhile to get into the experience of real partnership. If you see the word leadership, you're probably a little threatened. That leadership means authority, could be very authoritative, but actually leadership makes a resilience on the professional side. And it can give you a certain kind of helping hand if you are searching for support. And I've heard nice examples about how teacher leadership can really be helpful for parents. And here we again have a flashcard of partnership. And I think if we take our share in responsibility on the evidence that we are focusing on a bigger Europe, not only on our local and regional level, seeing that we really want to be more democratic, have this individual responsibility. The word entrepreneurial should not be taken literally as an economic term, but taking risk, taking responsibility. Take the space for creativity and self-determination, and see that all the labels that are put on future cannot be predicted. It's not learning for growth of economy, it's not learning for new jobs, it's learning to cope with whatever comes next day, learning to be able to create something and to, well, calculate the unforeseen. And so that's the only thing in Irish that I got. Thank you very much.